Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I rise to speak on the Mitochondrial Donation Law Reform, Maeve's Law, Bill 2021. The bill amends existing legislation to allow mitochondrial donation techniques to be used for research, training and human reproductive purposes. The overall aim is for women at risk of passing a mitochondrial disease to have reproductive options for biological children without the increased risk of their child having mitochondrial disease. And it's really important for people before judging to understand just what does a child with mitochondrial disease mean. It's a group of inherited conditions that can cause serious health issues and, in severe cases, death in childhood. Disease is caused by mutations that impact the function of the mitochondria, meaning it reduces their ability to produce energy. To give you perspective, in Australia, about 1 in 200 babies are born with some level of mutation that could lead to mitochondrial disease in their lifetime. And about 1 in 5, so some 10,000 Australians, develop severe or life-threatening mitochondrial disease in their lifetime. This is very important to Warringah. The bill is named after Maeve, a little girl who at the time of drafting lived in the Minister for Health's electorate, and I commend the Minister for Health for his compassion in bringing this bill forward. He's working with the family and ensuring that a conscience vote is available to the members in this place around this legislation. I wish there were more such votes on so many issues in this place. So Maeve's grandfather now lives in Warringah, and I spoke with him recently about the bill. He was worried that this bill wasn't going to come on before the end of this term, and he was fretting that if there was any further delay in voting on this legislation, more families and more children would be impacted. It is vitally important that we debate and consider this bill as soon as possible because, as he explained to me, while the bill won't help Maeve, it will be vitally important for many future children and families. And he would like the House to know Maeve is a wonderful, happiest child. She's already far exceeded her life expectancy. She's 8 years old. But Greg implored me to vote in support of this bill, and I will be doing that. The Mito Foundation has a strong presence in Warringah as well. They do fantastic work to support people affected by mitochondrial disease, and they're raising funds for essential research into the prevention, diagnosis, treatment and cures of mitochondrial disorders and increasing awareness about the disease. Actually, I believe it was very recently, the Bloody Long Walk, which traverses 4 of the beautiful beaches of my electorate, and I excuse obviously the title of the walk is because of the length of the walk. It traverses Dee Why, Curl, Freshwater and Manly, is one of the fundraisers for the Mito Foundation. And I've been a proud participant of the Bloody Long Walk. Excuse me, I really shouldn't repeat the name. It's probably an unparliamentary term, but it is the name of the walk. It is some 35 kilometres numerous times. It was held once again the weekend before last in horrendous weather. The coastline of the northern beaches was full of drama under dark storm clouds, but so many participated because they know this is such an important cause. A mitochondrial donation is an assisted reproductive technology that can assist women to avoid passing mitochondrial disease to their child. It works by creating an embryo by using the nDNA from the prospective mother and father and healthy mtDNA donor. In the UK, the legislation was introduced to permit mitochondrial donation in 2015, and it remains the only country that has done so. Our current legislation prohibits mito donation under the Prohibition of Human Cloning and Reproduction Act 2002 and the Research Involving Human Embryos Act 2002. It's time for that to be amended and to bring it forward to these developments. The bill amends these acts to make donation legal for research and human reproductive purposes. The bill creates a 2-stage implementation approach. It has been thorough to ensure there are no abuses, that this is done to the highest standard. In the first instance, limiting the number and type of licences to practice the procedure in preclinical and clinical trials only, And then once clinical trials have been shown to be successful and the findings of stage 1 reviewed and accepted as safe and effective, stage 2 will permit mitochondrial donation in clinical practice. Stage 1 will allow eligible women to access mitochondrial donation by participating in the clinical trial. It's anticipated that a low number of people will access the technology, but in the women who do participate, they may require multiple rounds of IVF, and the trial is expected to take place over approximately 10 to 12 years. So this is a really slow and very careful process, but it will make such a difference to the families involved, to the women who fear passing on this condition to their children. The process to get this to legislation has been very comprehensive, starting with the Senate inquiry in 2018. The government responded to the Senate inquiry report in February 2019, which led to the creation of an expert working committee in March of that year. And then between September and November 2019, the NHMRC undertook community consultation on the social and ethical considerations of the possible introduction of mitochondrial donation in Australian clinical practice. And finally, the Department of Health conducted a round of consultation between February to March this year. So for all those worried about this legislation, this has been a very thorough process. And I believe that the government has got the balance right on this legislation. And I support the bill and commend the consultation process, and in particular the Minister for Health. There has been social and ethical concerns raised, and I acknowledge that some in the community may have ethical concerns around the right of the child, status of the embryo, and the role and rights of women donating eggs and community considerations. But I'm convinced that the consultation process has been thorough and that the balance of the advantages of mitochondrial donation outweigh these concerns. There are appropriate safeguards in place to mitigate ethical and medical considerations. They've been taken into account, and I support the advancement of science that will prevent the occurrence of children born with this disease, that this treatment can prevent. This is one of those times where we have an opportunity in this place to make a very real and very significant difference to the outcomes and lives of so many mothers as they then approach their journey to motherhood, and the families that will involve, because this does impact whole families. So I thank the government for presenting this bill. I thank them for also making this a conscience vote. I wish we saw more of that in this place so that we actually had a more, I think, genuine debate and genuine approach to legislation, so we can really talk about how meaningful they are rather than trying to make it a political fight. So I commend this bill to the House, and I would finally finish with, I'd like to thank Maeve's family, because they have been on an incredible journey, like all the families that have been impacted by mitochondrial disease. But they have been incredibly resilient and incredibly dedicated to ensuring that others are not met with quite the same challenge that they have gone through. And they are doing an amazing job, but they would like to provide more optimism, a better prognosis for others, and make sure they don't have to go through the distress and heartbreak that this condition can bring on families and children. So thank you to Maeve's family and to Maeve for being the namesake of this legislation that I hope will change many lives. Thank you.
I thank the member for Ringer. The question is that the bill